Hi, welcome to another episode of Founder Friday. I am Amy Hooper, founder of Relativity Cells, here with Tara Horstmeyer from Happy Words. I'm so excited to interview you, Tara, because we're going to talk about content creation today. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Amy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so content is something that some of us like to do and some of us don't like to do as founders.
Yeah.
It seems to me, in my personal experience, to be really difficult sometimes to get that time and space, to write. So what I'd love to talk with you about today is how, founders can really understand what to put together for their content, what content is really helpful for their business as they're, very much focused on driving, new customers. And so what kind of content really converts over?
No, those are all, insanely important topics. And it's literally why I have a business, and kind of how I backed into it was seeing that there is a huge need, and founders they just need some help, and very, very smart. Obviously, anybody who goes into, starting a business, owning a business, running a business has the chops. So I never work with founders where I'm like, you can't do this. It's more of, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing this just because of the time that it takes in the long run. But when you start, just like any kind of founder-led selling, you got to do it yourself just to understand how it works until you're able to later on partner with someone who can, bring it up a notch and take it farther than you can go. But it's always so smart just for a founder and CEOs just to get in there and understand what content is from a personal content creation standpoint, not necessarily your brand content standpoint as far as your company.
Yeah, I think that, founders can oftentimes feel defeated when content doesn't convert immediately, or when you post something on a social channel, for an example, and you don't get 300 likes immediately. Can you talk a little bit about, what to really expect? I know a lot of my clients have been, technical in their careers, and now they're, early stage tech founders. And so, oftentimes they haven't come from marketing backgrounds, but they want to learn about, what to expect. If I put effort forth in marketing, how long is it really going to take us to see results? And that obviously varies per client and what they're putting out there. But can you kind of explain just the content creation process, and when you're first starting out, what to expect?
Yeah. So when you're taking content, there's a few different buckets. The one that I specialize in, I'll get to, and that's just personal content creation. So that's personal brand side of LinkedIn, writing as yourself as the founder. But the content game, so to speak, especially as a founder and you're trying to build your brand and build your voice, it's so smart to do those in tandem, to also have yourself and anybody else connected with your company creating content as yourself on the side from a personal story standpoint. But it's also great just to get your brand name out, of course. And so creating content across all different channels that your customers are in. So step number one, of course, go where your customers are. Anytime you're creating content, a lot of times where founders will get burned out is because not that they're not doing the right thing, they're just doing too much. So they're going wide instead of deep. So if you're a technical founder, hey, my ICP, my people are on LinkedIn, then let's start there. Or if they're on Twitter, let's start there. Some founders, the company I used to work for, our vertical, our ICP was on Instagram. And so that is where we put all of our effort. So the best thing to do is not even think about, okay, what kind of content, it's where the content should be. And then once you're, okay, let's get our swimming legs under there. Then if you're thinking through the lens of brand, then that you can have a lot of fun with that from a broad standpoint of, okay, how can I just create raving fans for my product, for my service, for whatever it is that I'm putting out there from a brand standpoint. You can be a little different. You can, do brand affinity, but it takes time. And that's probably the hardest thing for any founder to hear, is that it does take time. But the great thing is when you lay a foundation ahead of time, you just don't go out throwing spaghetti against the wall. You spend time, building a framework, figuring out your pillars, doing all of that before you ever put a piece of content out there. It shortens that time frame so much to where that you're, fishing in the right pond, number one, but you're also putting the right hooks on that, fishing rod, and that you're going to get the fish. in a much shorter time frame, a 3 to 6 month process, or shorter, but with that content. And then when you're talking a personal brand, the great thing about that is it's even shorter than that. You can really start to see some results the more you put into it, which again, it starts with a foundation and a process. But when you're talking from a personal standpoint, 92% of people prefer word of mouth from a person saying, even if it's your own company, they will still trust you versus somebody posting from a kind of faceless brand that they don't know yet. So again, the space-time continuum can be shrunk, but it really depends on the kind of the foundation that you're laying before you start to post any content.
Yeah. And how often do you think founders should really, when they're just starting out, like how often should they post? Should they post every day? If they're on, let's just say LinkedIn or Twitter, like what's the frequency?
So ideally, as you're building, you really want to be in front of people as much as possible, so a frequency is very important. I would say at least 3 times a week. If you can get up to every weekday, I mean, hey, there are superstars that just have a lot to say and they want to go out and do 7 days. It's fine. But I'm in the game of sustainability and accessibility because it is social media, so you want to make sure that however you're posting at a frequency that makes you visible, makes you start to be repeatable, see, consistent, like, okay, I keep seeing Amy. I see her again, so now I'm kind of to expect to see you. But also the accessibility piece is huge because it's social media. So I do, encourage founders, post when you have time to respond, like ideally I want to get you on a schedule. I want you to be posting every morning, or 3 mornings a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m., or 9:05 or whatever it is. But to give yourself about a 20 to 30 minute window right after you post to be accessible, to be commenting on, other people's, as well as replying to any comments on your own. And so developing that cadence early on starts, but ideally I'd love to get people up to 5 days a week.
I love that you bring up the fact of posting on other people's social media comments, because I think sometimes folks say, oh, you know what, it's just a popularity contest. Like you guys are just really, we see you on LinkedIn, you're putting content out there, right? And some of the technical folks that are not exactly extroverts by nature, they kind of, they give feedback to, I really have a problem. Like, I really don't think that this is going to work. It's not worth my time. And my feedback on that is you need to give it enough time to really test. So give it at least 6 months or longer, probably longer, honestly. And you need to make sure that you are engaging, because it's not about you. It's not about getting the attention on you. It's about providing tips, providing best practices in whatever field that you're in. But then it's also engaging and building a community of people around you. So partners or other people within your industry. How in depth do you think people should get with that kind of a thing? Because social media can certainly chew up a few hours a day where you're like, oh man, I just sucked up my morning, right?
Yeah, it's an easy vortex to get sucked down. So that's why everything that I start with is strategic. And this is where I hope tech founders can lean in, because I really love speaking your language. Honestly, it's easier to convert tech founders to a plan, a game plan, a strategy, checking off boxes, so to speak. And doing this more than like kind of relational butterflies. And I'm like, I got to rein you in, because you are going to spend all day, because it is fun and it is great to do that. But when you really look at it as, again, this is, people say like the long game, and that's really what it is, but not that people are a game. And that's the biggest thing to do, because nobody likes to get played, so not thinking of people as a game, but just thinking about strategically setting up your time to engage with other people. So choosing the right people to engage with. Like you don't need to, engage with everybody under the sun who pops up in your feed because, a second degree connection liked it. Like you don't need to do that, so there are strategies of like bookmarking people's tabs that you want to engage with daily, knowing when people post, making sure that you are maximizing your time and looking at it as a strategy, because that's really what it is. And it's just human nature, it's very much psychology of reciprocity. I can't even say it, but it's basically, I'm going to give, to you. And then I hope at some point it's that whole like, hey, in order for someone to really get value, you've got to give value first, and you've got to go out of your way to say, I'm here, I'm visible and I care about what you say. But when it comes to making content, I always say it's not a blog post and it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue, so
Yeah.
putting in content that is helpful. But what really helps is when I sit with people and I say, hey, think about the content that you're drawn to. Like when you're on LinkedIn, think about the people that you remember or the things that you bookmark and save. It's all from the lens of this is helping me. It's helping me become a better leader, a better salesperson, a better founder, a better, human, maybe better soft skills. Like they're helping me succeed in an area that I want. So when you start putting out content, even commenting, doing it through the lens of how is this actually helpful? How is this adding value? How is this making someone else more successful or building a relationship? And so when you switch that mindset of like, this isn't just like a social popularity game, this is actually very strategic and smart and savvy in both ways, then I think that it becomes less about a popularity game and more about this is a strategic move for my business and my brand long term.
I love your point about it is a dialogue, right? It's not just a post. It's just not a blog, right? It's not the to-do that, oh God, I gotta get this out, right? But you're actually engaging in conversation, because now that we're in virtual selling, and we're going to be in this world for, I think, a very long time, it may never go back to what it was before. Who knows? I can tell you that I certainly appreciate not having to travel, but being able to hop on and you can literally, work with either your clients or your audience across the nation of the globe within seconds, whereas before it just wasn't like that. So, how do you feel about, email content, and then how often do you think like blog posts? Because I think those pieces, I think people are kind of into social because it is so quick and you can do a lot within a short amount of time. But the blog posts usually take some research, and then of course email. People are like, well, is it really going to convert because the conversion rates are so low traditionally?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So everything plays a piece, it's not like, okay, we're just going to double down and triple down on this one thing and let it sail into the sunset until the end. Like don't forget that, because it does serve an absolute need, the social media piece. But when it comes to blog, people need to have a place to go. So that's where it's like, okay, LinkedIn or all of these, it's almost like that's the living room. That's the foyer. That's where they come in. That's probably where they're going to first hear about you. So interesting. And then what do people naturally do? That's an interesting business. They'll go to your profile, and then they'll click on your website. And so having things there, don't neglect the blog. It does not need to be at the beginning. It does not need to be daily. I would say weekly, and some companies do it so well every other week or even once a month, as long as the content is quality and you can backfill it, you can have 3-6 posts already ready to go whenever you launch, or as long as you're just updating it, and you're not thinking through like, yes, there's SEO, yes, there's, a whole big strategy here. But if you're thinking through, okay, I just need to have basically a landing page. I need to have a place for people to come and do more. And then that will, as the rest of my company stands up, then we can invest more in marketing and content. But just having something there that shows the more in-depth how your, product works, service works in the blog. So don't neglect that. But it's okay to also that you don't need to dive in immediately, everything in its place, and just have some content there that expands on your products and services. And as far as email is not dead. It is. In fact, I would say, I've been around a long time. I look, a little younger than I am, but in my, almost 2-decade-long career of working in editorial journalism, it's interesting to see people come and go. And I feel like people are moving back toward email in a flurry of activity because of the visual selling, and because we are so face-to-face so much that people need a little bit of a break from the meeting. And if you can communicate things, it's kind of like, this could have been an email. If you can communicate over email in a way that gives value. So getting your mailing list and making sure that every single piece of content, including email that you're sending out, has an actual action or is very clear of saying, this is no action. This is a deposit. This is something for you. And then it should be 80%, 20%, 80% deposit, 20% ask, 80% deposit. 20% ask.
Love that.
And so again, that can be over volume, or it can be over, if you send one every day, that means once a week you're doing an ask. If you're sending for a month, once a month you're doing an ask, and the rest should be deposit.
Right. I love that. 80-20. Okay. The 80-20 rule. There you have it. All right. The final thing that I know everybody is wondering about is, okay, we are wearing 10 different hats as founders, right? So who's going to write my content? I really don't want to do it. When should I write my content? And when should I have someone like a ghostwriter or someone do it for me?
So there's no wrong answer. Like I said at the beginning, I think you need to, as the founder, you need to get your voice, get your swimming legs under you, understand LinkedIn enough, not to say, hey, I need to be the expert. It's like everything else. You have to learn it before you can lead it, And so that's what I always say. I'm like, I don't need to be the expert. I don't need to, one day I'm going to hand this off and one day I'm going to hand this off. But until I'm there, I have got to at least be proficient and know what's going on so I can lead it. That's all. Yeah. So same thing with, I think, any kind of social media, any kind where your name is attached. Again, this is kind of separate where you can hand off your brand a little bit easier. But when you're talking about your voice, your name, just understanding what is my voice? What is my name? I do a really extensive, questionnaire in depth to help founders with that and to help people get kind of their swimming legs. But part of that is also understanding that it does require just some kind of knowledge on your own just to get yourself behind it, And so even if it's a short amount of term, or even if it's, we're going to do this together and I want you to post once a week and I post, or I give you content for the other 2 or 3 times, that's fine. But I do love when at least in the beginning, you're selling, you're just kind of getting your voice, your swimming legs under you. But I don't think it's either too soon or too late to hand it off once you realize that you cannot put the consistency behind it. Because again, I don't even think it's as much, hey, I'm not able to do it. It's, should I be doing this? Should I be, instead of handing it to someone who can do it with me and for me and give me the reins to be able to say, okay, now I've got some paint on the canvas. And so we collaborate. It's not like, hey, I just go off and make stuff up and come back. It's very collaborative. So that, if you want to work together, you would feel like, okay, these are my words that I'm putting out. But then you can do the fun stuff, which is, again, engaging in the comments, focusing on the strategy of your business, and then letting someone else kind of take the heavy lifting of just the consistent engine, constantly doing the work for you behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's like dieting and exercise. Consistency is key. That's always been my downfall. No, that's great. Well, I'm so glad to know that you are available to help, folks out there that just can't be consistent for whatever reason. Or just might, want a little bit of help and coaching around, their content needs. So they can find you at happywordsell.com, right, Tara?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm going to include all of your links so that you guys can all connect at the end of this session. And until we meet again at our next Founder Friday, you can reach me at relativitysells.com. Thank you.